Atypical, the podcast. This is where we discuss and explore life from an atypical perspective. My name is Simon, he there, your host, and I am joined by two friends today to talk about Mental Health Awareness Week. With me, I have Kim.
Hello.
And joining us, I have a special guest, Joey.
Hello.
At the end of the last episode, we promised that this week we'd be talking about masking, but as anyone who has dealt with a group of neurodivergent people might know, it's sometimes like organising things is a little bit difficult, and deadlines came up and other stuff. So that episode is coming. So in the meantime, the three of us were thinking that actually, since it is in fact Mental Health Awareness Week in the UK this week, and that the key focus area that it is looking at is loneliness. That might be quite a good topic to discuss, because obviously loneliness has been, a growing issue that has become much more prevalent in the last few years, or at least I say prevalent, has become much more acknowledged in the last few years. I think COVID especially has kind of kick-started this. And one of the things which the Mental Health Foundation has said is that in their research, around 1 in 4 adults say that they feel lonely some or even all of the time. And while there's no single cause and indeed no single solution, because we are, after all very different people, one of the things which they point out is the longer we feel lonely, the more likely we are to be at risk of other mental health problems. And I think that we have seen a bit of a glut of this over the last couple of years, haven't we? What with COVID and with being much more physically and socially separated from people. I mean, that was the whole term, wasn't it? Was social distancing. And I know that loneliness is one of those things that can affect LGBTQ plus people and neurodivergent people to a greater extent than other typical people. I mean, what do we think about this?
So I'm a fitness instructor, so as you know, but obviously the people listening don't. But obviously, I have
You are very fit.
Thank you very much. All compliments will get you everywhere. Obviously, I can speak very long and hard about the benefits of exercise to your mental health. One of the things we've been doing with Mental Health Awareness Week at work is to make sure to try and get the message out about the positive benefits of exercise. But what we did notice with a lot of our clientele is that during the lockdowns and things, obviously they couldn't get into the gym, they couldn't get to their classes, they couldn't get to that body balance class that was their favourite 45 minutes of the week, the thing they looked forward to, that de-stressing thing, as well as it being good for them, because exercise is good for you physically and mentally. But they didn't have that social interaction, and they didn't have that thing to look forward to. And I think when you suddenly realise actually you need things to look forward to, but it's like little things. It doesn't have to be the big holiday. It can just be actually like going to the gym, like going to the cinema.
Yeah, I think, it definitely has been one of those things, I think, where I think mental health has just kind of been, I think in one ways it's kind of just been a difficult few years, and kind of life is just getting harder with kind of the cost of living, etc., going up, and just certain events going on. I think obviously people being more aware of it now means that obviously people are coming forward a lot more to talk about mental health, which is really good. But yeah, I think definitely the last few years has definitely made it more difficult for people to kind of do the things that they do that help their mental health, being able to see people or take part in that fitness class, or I mean even before, when we were limited to just staying in our kind of 4 walls and not even being able to get out and kind of just have some nice fresh air, and well, maybe not fresh air in London for us, but I think we've been definitely limited in what we can do to kind of support our mental health.
I think as well, because obviously it's a global event, that I think this year, with the first Mental Health Week that's been relatively out of COVID, it's not really something people talk about too much at the moment. So it's the first one where everyone's had the realization of how important it is, because I think everyone has suffered. I haven't spoken to a single person that didn't struggle through that period, even if they were still working, even if they were still going out. It was a very stressful time because all the normal coping mechanisms that everyone had gone, which is, again, why I think so many people went for some hobby and went mad with it, to the point that they're now all experts in it, because they had nothing else to do, and that was their coping mechanism. So I do think there's going to be a lot of discussion over the next week or so with mental health awareness week.
Yeah.
It's going to be very much in people's minds.
And I think trying to put a positive spin on this, in some ways, it perhaps been a good thing. It has broken down a number of those sort of preconceptions that a lot of people had about mental health and loneliness and so forth, because it has brought it to the fore. Like you say, we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and everyone's experienced to a greater or lesser extent some kind of an impact on them. And I think actually that the fact that we're being a bit more open about it, a bit more understanding of people's lives, and could that perhaps lead to better conversations now than we could have had even 4 or 5 years ago?
Well, I think it's removed the stigma that it happens to other people. That the idea that it's you're somehow weak or deficient, and that's why you've got a mental health illness, or even just suffering from loneliness. I think with the stigma. Because obviously when you think about mental health, you have this weird image of a mental asylum from the 19th century and people being electrocuted and all these horrible treatments. Because whenever it's in the media, you're not talking everyday people. You're talking about the people whose health is deteriorated to such a horrendous extent that you don't realize that there's people on the periphery who just need a bit of help, but not to that extreme. So now that everyone, I think, has realised actually everyone suffers and everyone can have these issues, I think people won't have so much stigma behind it. I certainly noticed with work and things, talking to a lot of people, and people don't seem embarrassed to actually say, I can't come into work today. I just don't have the mental capacity to do it, and having a day to talk about it, and everyone's been very supportive. Whereas I think pre-COVID, I think people would have been very, oh God, yeah, look at them with, their problem, they're just making it up sort of thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you say there. I mean, in a previous episode, and Kim, you might remember, we talked about spoons, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
And I think sort of what you allude to there is actually us being a bit more open with saying, actually, do you know what? I don't have the spoons. I don't have the mental capacity to deal with this thing today.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the thing. It's, everyone has mental health as everyone has physical health, and it is a spectrum of kind of where you fall on that. It's about making sure that everyone looks after their mental health as much as they do their physical health, because, at the end of the day, if you neglect one, you can't do as much at all. And, it will impact you at some point, to the point where you kind of have to sort of say no or stop, or take a day off sick. The same thing if you push yourself physically or mentally, really.
Yeah, and I think the stigma that's gone as well is that you can just take the day that if you need it. If you've got a really bad cold or something, some physical illness, you've got a terrible migraine, you might only need the day off to recuperate. But I think before, if people were wanting to say that they're stressed, or they're having some episode mentally that's causing them distress, they would be worried about saying, I'm going to have to take the day or the week, because they're worried it might then turn into months and people are going to look at them differently because of it, or oh God, they're going to bring the people with the white coats to come and lock me up. Whereas actually all you need is a day, a week to decompress, and then you're okay to return to that situation. Obviously there's situations that people need a longer break and they need more structured help, but I think for a lot of people, having that decompression time is more acceptable now, and people are more comfortable saying, actually, I need a moment and then I can come back to it.
Okay, I think that's a really, really nice way of sort of starting to talk about, I think, where we are as a country, as a society, and the way in which we tackle mental health. And I think the fact that this is an awareness week, perhaps we need to do, as we've done with the autism week, and move to an acceptance week, mental health acceptance, and understanding that actually we all have it, we all experience it in our own unique ways, but that there are lots of things we can do to support each other and build a healthier society. I think one of the things that might be quite nice to talk about is, the focus of this year's Mental Health Awareness Week is loneliness. And there's lots of research that suggests that LGBTQ plus people and neurodivergent people are more likely to experience loneliness. I mean, taking neurodivergence first, for example, I mean, as an autistic person, I sometimes feel lonely in a crowd because I don't necessarily understand what's going on there. I'm not able to experience the things in the same way as those people around me. I'm not experiencing what my peers are doing. I'm not sure whether or not I'm conforming with a set of social norms. So therefore, that makes me feel othered. And so it's possible to feel lonely in a crowd, in a group. I know we all have very different experiences. I mean, do either of you want to talk about loneliness?
I find it fascinating, obviously, that neurodivergent people and people the LGBT plus group are statistically more likely to suffer from mental health and from loneliness. And I'm wondering whether it's either something wiring wise, where we're just more prone, or is it actually just any minority where you feel, I don't know, downtrodden's not the right word, but out of the group? So loneliness, because I've certainly been to parties where I felt lonely, and I'm not exactly the wallflower. I'm not the wallflower at all. I spend my professional life standing in front of 40 people, shouting at them, telling them to do exercise. It's not an issue I have, but I know that feeling of you don't fit in. And I think that's what the biggest thing with loneliness is. You feel like you don't fit in, so you can't be part of the group. And even if you're alone in your house, why haven't you then said to someone, "We'll come over"? And I think there's the part of a sort of a not feeling that you deserve someone to come over, so you haven't asked. I mean, there are obviously going to be situations such as our lockdown, or just people are busy, because that does happen, where you are going to be lonely because people can't come see you. But I wonder if it's more of a perceived thing that you're unable to get past whatever barrier it is which you've created in your mind that doesn't allow you to then not be lonely. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, I think it does. Definitely. I think, yeah, I'm trying to think of it now as a bit of a sort of chicken and egg scenario, in that kind of you can, I guess, yeah, be lonely, which can sort of impact your mental health. And then your mental health being impacted can also then kind of lead to feeling more lonely, and therefore kind of also not reaching out to people as well. And I think there's that kind of intersection between, not feeling like you deserve people around you or deserve love or anything like that, which I think tends to happen with people that, their mental health is low, but I think also tends to happen a lot more, particularly with people, I think, in the LGBT community. It's probably the same with people in the neurodivergent community as well. But just, feeling like if you don't fit in, and then kind of don't necessarily, having low self-esteem, and then not feeling like you kind of necessarily deserve that kind of interaction necessarily like other people around you are getting. So I think it's a bit of a few things, to be honest.
Certainly, I sort of thinking about this from the point of view of being, I have so many intersectionalities. I'm not entirely sure which one it is that comes to the fore when I feel lonely. Is it because I'm a mostly gay man, or is it because I'm being autistic or ADHD, or hints of PTSD sneaking back up on me? I do experience loneliness quite a lot, actually, which from an intellectual point of view, I know is a little bit insane, because I know that I could pick up my phone at any point and speak to a number of people. I could turn probably to Joey and say, "I'm having a bad week. Can I come visit?" And within a couple of hours, one of your parents would be giving me a glass of wine. But that doesn't necessarily get over the fact of, sometimes when we do feel lonely, we don't actually feel able to reach out to people and solve that loneliness issue. I mean, I know there is a biological imperative to contacting people. We're talking about your hindbrain, your lizard brain here. You get a dopamine hit. If you text 10 people going hi, as soon as you get a response, you go, oh, little dopamine hit. Yeah? Oh. But sometimes when you are not feeling great, you kind of go, as one who said earlier on, I don't feel like I deserve it. And I think that's.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine.
I was
Go
just
ahead.
going to say that is the biggest problem with all mental health issues generally, is that they're a downward spiral. You have mostly for a lot of issues, you have the power in yourself to fix it, but you don't want to. And the conversation I have with a lot of friends who are on antidepressants, and they're talking about that they're on the antidepressants, but they're not doing anything else to help themselves. So they're not doing the exercise, they're not counselling, they're not doing any of the 20 things that every single person is told help. And it's like, have you done a single one of them? No. But why? And you get into that situation where you don't want to help yourself, and that is obviously the most dangerous part, is that you don't even seek help, let alone think that you deserve it. It's the dangerous thing.
I can see it from my own perspective when I've been like in a downward spiral, and there's always something, there's almost something slightly enjoyable about being on that spiral and just going, you know what, I just don't want to reach out to people. I'm just going to like really just spiral downwards as much as possible, and just because you don't feel like you deserve it. And there's some weird sadistic pleasure in that. So yeah, I can see it from that perspective sometimes. times, and it then obviously just makes it even harder to reach out.
Oh, especially if your brain's rewarding you negatively, you're actually getting pleasure out of a negative feedback loop. That then becomes obviously even more dangerous than just your downward spiral.
Yeah, bloody brain, the mess.
I mean, I feel almost as if, it'd be wonderful if we had, I don't know, like a doctor in genetics here who could tell us whether or not there's a component or not to this.
Oh dear, yeah, possibly. I mean, yeah, that is a reference to me. But if anyone tuned into the last one about imposter syndrome, then I'll probably just be like, nah, I'm not really a doctor of genetics, really.
I've read your dissertation, so
you didn't actually read my entire dissertation, surely.
it did take me a couple of months.
Did you actually read the whole thing?
Yes.
Oh my god.
I didn't necessarily understand all of it, but
wow.
Tell Jerry about how you opened it. It's a wonderful.
Oh yeah, I quoted something from. Is this the one where I quoted the bit from the kind of? Was it The Hobbit?
Yeah.
It was. It was very. It was going on about. It was like the long journey home or something? I can't remember what the exact. Yeah, which just talks about going on a journey. It was a little bit quite cynical about the whole fact that it was like long journey and how kind of slightly dark associations with how I found the PhD. Some good parts, but also some exhausting negative parts as well.
That's a lovely little thing though to do, to add a nice little quote from The Hobbit.
Yes, yeah. I was like, I'm gonna just if I can be, I'm doing a PhD, so I'm a bit of a geek anyway, so I might as well even geek it up even more.
At least you like The Hobbit. At least you're not going, I just randomly found something.
No, I did, yeah. Or do.
I thought of it because the quote that I remember was actually, I felt kind of went in a little bit to the loneliness thing. And without wanting to put you on the spot, I'm going to put you on the spot because you'll beat me up later. It's fine. But did you find doing the PhD could be quite lonely?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that was one of the difficulties of doing a PhD actually, is because you are surrounded by all these other people that are in exactly the same position. All of you are doing a PhD, but all of you are very solely focused on your particular project. So yeah, it can be, really difficult because at the end of the day, it's kind of you to solve the problem and you to kind of push it forward and write the thesis. At the end of the day, no one can actually do that for you, sadly, even though at times you want that to happen. And I think particularly writing up the thesis, I ended up trying to do it away from the lab because it was just too distracting. And, I ended up doing it from home / in the library. And that was a very lonely period because I just had myself and my computer pretty much to coax myself into writing it.
Going lonely periods. When I used to run my contract cleaning company, we used to have a client that required us to be in overnight because it was a disability day centre. So during the day, it had people in who had adult learning difficulties, so required a lot of care. And obviously, you can't get in and do things while the building's being used. So it was overnight. And I used to do a lot of it by myself and spend Monday to Friday by myself. And during the winter, so all I saw was darkness for 3-4 months. And I have to admit, that's probably the only time in my life where I've really felt truly lonely because you can't socialise because everyone's at work 9 to 5 and you start work at 4, finish at 10 o'clock at night and you just don't see anyone and you just really do get into that horrendous situation where you are morbidly lonely and then sort of almost trying to shirk your responsibility at work just so you can see another human being. But that's when I also realised that I don't get seasonally depressed, but it does I notice my mood is noticeably worse in the winter, even though all the things I really enjoy about the year are in the winter. But it's when that was really highlighted to me that actually the season does affect my mood. And if I'm going to be in a lower mood, I do need to actually see people to keep myself topped up. But that's why I'm a fitness instructor. I see 400 people a week. So
yes, you're a classic extrovert, aren't you? You get your energy from people.
Yeah.
I might have to cut in like "Hello, darkness, my old friend" at this point. That's
going to cost a lot.
Oh god, yeah, I'll get a copyright strike, won't I? It's interesting actually you say about that because I mean I spent 7 years working a full shift pattern in the emergency services, and it became very difficult to take leave and to plan things because of course if you've got your shifts for the year but there's only a limited amount of people who are allowed to be off at any one time because you've got to maintain resilience, it made it almost impossible for me to actually go to social things to keep friends, and I lost friendships because I was never available to do things. They'd drop me a message on like Wednesday Wednesday saying, "Hey, do you want to come to a barbecue at the weekend?" I'd be like, "The weekend? What, in 12 months' time? Maybe. Let me check." And so sort of, I didn't really have much of a social circle, and I did feel quite lonely. And your point there about being at night and so forth. If I was on a run of nights, I could go a week without seeing daylight, and that impacts your mental health as well. And so for me, one of the reasons why I maintained my membership of an outdoor group, even though I didn't go to that many events during sort of the more difficult things, was it forced me to actually spend time with people and not get into those depressing cycles. And indeed, actually, I was on one of those events and explaining to someone why my mental health was so bad at the time, and they made me sit down with a piece of paper and write my CV. And that helped me immeasurably, because for one thing, I got to meet Kim, which is always amazing. So
on the night thing though, but do you remember when we got back from Norway and we'd spent a week in perpetual daylight and it was dark and we all just went, "Oh my god, it's the moon!" And just so it's I think just not having that normal circadian rhythm, it just affects you. It probably doesn't matter which one goes. It's just that loss of the routine is horrific.
Yeah, Norway in summer is not a country. It is an experiment designed by psychologists to see how quickly they can drive you insane. I mean, beautiful, beautiful country. Don't get me wrong. We had such a lovely time. But as Joe says, we were sat by this campfire with a beer on the side of a and he said a loch, a fjord, and it's like, it's the sun's going down. Should what time is it? Should we go to bed? It's 1:30 in the morning. Like, it's still light. Yeah, that did screw with my brain, I have to admit. Anyway, I've got lost. What were we talking about? Loneliness.
Funny though, because obviously, like, loneliness is, as you said, not a component of being around people. You can feel lonely in a crowded room, but you can also not feel if you're perfectly happy with your own company. The people who can spend weeks on it, it's such a funny, entirely personal feeling of what loneliness is. It makes it, again, like a lot of mental health things, it makes it so difficult to categorize and then diagnose and then treat, because you can't put a label on it. And I do putting labels on things so they're nice and organized, but it's just
that's your OCD coming out there.
Things have a place and they should be in it. Okay?
I agree.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good point. I mean, what do you think, Kim? I mean, is loneliness a component of being able to spend a lot of time on your own? Because I know I can, but I can enjoy being on my own. I mean, what do you think, Kim?
I don't know. I think they are two separate things, really. I mean, I do enjoy spending a lot of time on my own. I need it to recharge, definitely. I don't know, introvert / ambivert or something, if that's a thing. But yeah, I do think loneliness a lot of the time is just feeling like you are alone in, I don't know, more about kind of your situation or the way that you think about something, or I guess, yeah. I think that can be in terms of where you are at that particular time. But I think, yeah, if it is in a group of people, you might be surrounded by a load of people that really love football and you hate football. I feel like Marianne sort of let me think about
as soon as you said it, I could hear Marianne's voice.
This is turning into the anti-football podcast.
I know, it is, isn't it? I just felt like I have to think about that one now. Or, I mean, for me, I'm more often surrounded by people that are talking about their kids or something, and I'm like, not really, I don't really care about that. Sounds like a really anti-children now, which is not entirely untrue.
We're pro-trains, we're pro-trans, we're pro-union, we're anti-children, anti-football. How about that?
Oh God, we've lost a huge addition of supporters now, just a load of people.
Okay, well, we're not anti them. We just have
we've
have
just
questions.
all decided not to have them.
Yes.
But okay. So on loneliness again. Do you think it can be lonely and comfortable? Because do you think it's an offshoot of being uncomfortable though? If you're uncomfortable in a situation, you perceive that you then start thinking about the fact that you're alone in it. But if you're comfortable in the situation, do you actually think I'm lonely?
See, I think that's it's a really good question. We have a mutual friend who I can get in the car with and drive to Scotland, and we will say 3 sentences the entire time. And I don't feel at all lonely or an issue with that. I'm quite comfortable with the fact that we're sat there in silence for several hours whilst we drive the length of the country. And then there's other people if I'm with for more than 2 minutes and it's like, okay, what's going on here? I feel like I don't. Yeah, I think there's context to it as well as just the being involved part. I definitely get the being involved part, but
you can be involved. You can be involved in a situation where it's silent. Like
Mm.
This is something that my brother's partner commented on with my family, is that we can sit in the car and drive somewhere and not say a word. And he thinks when he first came into the situation, thought, God, do they all hate each other or something? It's so awkward. It's just, no, we're just all quite comfortable in our own little worlds. We're quite comfortable in each other's company, and we don't need to fill the silence out of any obligation to fill silence. We'll say something when something comes up, or you've
already said everything that needs to be said.
Yeah, so why am I talking? I don't need to say anything. And I think that's one of the things that I actually really appreciate in all my friends, is that we can actually just exist near each other, and that's enough. I mean, it's not like we don't do fun things. We go whitewater rafting and things. You know, we're happy to do the high octane stuff, but we're also just very happy to just all sit around a table and read a book each. But
That sounds nice.
it is nice. It's nice. It's a nice group of people. Apart from this person that keeps asking you to do podcasts, terrible.
I've carefully curated and manipulated my friends to the point where I can just sit there with a book and I don't get judged. So, but it's a good point. I mean, what do you reckon, Kim? I mean, can we? Is it contextual?
Oh, I had some really good thoughts, and then I got distracted by whitewater rafting and reading a book.
I'm so sorry.
No, what was I thinking? You know what? I do have about 3, but I didn't bring it into the room with me, so I was sort of trying to do it on my phone. But anyway,
merch. We could have branded notebooks.
Ooh, oh wow, that's thinking far ahead.
Sorry, carry on.
I think I was thinking in terms of, I think it definitely is contextual. I think if you're surrounded by people that you're comfortable with, that you can kind of occupy a space and, be your authentic self. I feel like I'm putting loads of buzzwords in now. Then, and you are comfortable with yourself, you can be yourself in front of everyone, then that's good. I think it is those particular situations, and I often think mostly in a work settings, because I feel like that's where my mind goes when I think about stuff, but not necessarily. It could be just in a different social setting, but where people are talking about a certain thing and you want to be in that in group because you depend on it for your work, or actually you're at a social event and you're there to socialize, but everyone's talking about something that you have no kind of connection with. I think that's when being lonely can feel really uncomfortable, because you want to be in that group, you want to kind of I guess be making those connections, but you have nothing to add. And that's kind of, I think, where you start to become a bit more insular and start thinking, oh, well, I don't have anything to add, I'm not really connected to this situation, I don't really care about these things. So I think, it definitely is textual.
So how should we try and tackle loneliness? I mean, we've covered a couple of them already, but I mean, what do we think are good ways of tackling that?
I think it's one of those things. I think obviously it is a bit of a spectrum, and I think it's important for everyone to kind of almost just sit with that feeling of loneliness sometimes, and just have things that they do when they are feeling lonely to support themselves. The standard kind of self-care things to do when you're feeling lonely, like often things that are comforting. And I think sometimes being able to kind of figure out why it is that you're feeling lonely is important. And then on the other side, it is kind of, if you are feeling that kind of consistent, continual loneliness, then getting out there and finding people that, make you feel kind of less lonely, that, fulfill that need of, why you're feeling that kind of loneliness are important things. Obviously big things to do, particularly if you're not feeling great, if your mental health isn't great, or you're kind of low in self-esteem. I think getting out there and doing that sort of thing is difficult. But if you have those people around you, then kind of reaching out to those people and even doing that kind of message that says, hi, I'm not having a great week, I think, is good. One of the good steps that you can put in place.
I mean, rather wonderfully, you've listed off 4 of the 8 things which the Mental Health Foundation recommends as coping strategies. So, you're definitely on the way. But I mean, what do you think, Joe? Anything else we could add to that?
I think if sort of loneliness being an offshoot, I mean, certainly I'd agree with Kim, understanding your loneliness is going to be really important, because if you haven't got a grip on it of why, then how do you even begin to go and treat it? But if loneliness is an offshoot of being out of the situation that you're comfortable with, you're not feeling like you can contribute to it, I think generally in those situations, not that being confident solves it, but being confident in yourself and knowing who you are, which is, let's face it, not an easy thing to do at all. But if you can do something where you succeed, something even if it's a small win, like new personal best of a 5K run, I don't know, I've actually managed to get to the shops on time today to buy the loaf of bread. Having that sort of positive wins in your life that can build your confidence up, it just gives you less self-doubt to be in a situation where actually you are able to contribute, but you've already talked yourself out of being able to do it. So you've added to your negative feedback loop. So giving yourself ways to climb back up that spiral. Obviously, I know exercise, very good. Join a group of walkers, go to the gym, go to a Zumba class, do something like that. Do something that actually is just fun, but is also good for you. And there's 1,000,001 different ways you can find that. And, walk the dog, go to the exercise class, join an outdoor knitting group. I don't know, something.
This advert brought to you courtesy of
an
outdoor knitting group. Oh, I like that idea.
I know.
Do you think Tom Daley does that?
I think Tom Daley knits wherever he goes at the moment. That's all my Instagram's filled with. Tom Daley knitting here, there, and everywhere. He's got his own knitting company now.
Oh, wow.
I know. That was his lockdown hobby that he got obsessed with, and it's now become a business for him.
That's hilarious. If I literally start searching Tom Daley, the first suggestion is Tom Daley knitting. Nothing else.
Tom Daley, the Olympian who knits. That's his thing.
If we're back to Kim Googling things again,
I can't. This is why I'm not on video, because I'm there just like playing around with my phone while at the same time also looking at things on the internet.
At least you're not sharing your screen.
After the enema discussion, I hope not. But no, I think you're absolutely right there. And you said much earlier on that actually getting into hobbies and things that you now become experts in, and taking that forward has actually been a relatively positive spin on dealing with things like lockdown and loneliness and mental health stuff. Is by acquiring a new skill or a new group, and going and doing stuff. I mean, it's helped me make some new friends and put myself out a bit more socially, and I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, well, funnily enough, fitness was my hobby. It was actually my Friday morning 45 minutes of pleasure was doing a Zumba class, and then I became a Zumba instructor, and then I became a fitness instructor in all the other disciplines, and it was all through, actually, it was the hobby, it was the thing that made me happy at the end of the week, and I went with it. Not to say that everyone should get a career out of their hobby, but having that 45-minute joy to look forward to was the thing that changed my life from being on a downward to an upward.
Any final thoughts from anyone?
No, I'm currently just Googling and looking at
Tom Daley's
Daley's
blankets.
Yeah. Sorry.
So next episode, we review Tom Daley's blankets.
Gosh, I wonder if he'll sponsor the podcast.
We'll see if we can get Tom Daley on to talk about his knitting company, shall we?
I'll come back for that.
Anyway, I'll have a think about other wrapping up thoughts.
Yeah, that's fine. Again, I can cut stuff out, so if we just need to...
Oh, thank God.
I think it's important. We've been talking about mental health today and things which are quite close and personal, both to ourselves and to a lot of people who might be listening. And one of the things which I always want to try and say whenever I talk about mental health stuff is that you are not alone. And if you are starting to struggle with anything, please do reach out and speak to someone. That could be, a work colleague, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be a stranger. There are loads of great resources online. You've got people like the Mental Health Foundation. You have any number of charities that are dealing with lots of different communities. So in London, you can always call the Switchboard, for example. And elsewhere in the country, they have similar ones. If you are neurodivergent, there are a number of charities and groups who you can reach out to for help. But I think that the core message for me when it comes to mental health is don't be ashamed and remember that you're not alone.
Yeah, I would say as well not to look at your problem as an insurmountable mountain. The chances are that actually it's lots of little steps, little changes to your life. It's not going to be some horrendous impossible challenge, so why bother starting because it's too big of a thing for me to possibly climb. It's actually likely lots of very small things that you can do that will start to make a big impact in your life, and then because you've made those smaller steps, the bigger more challenging things will be easier. And it's one step at a time, and that first step might seem scary, but it's probably not as big as you think it is to get the ball rolling in a more positive direction. But it's getting past that initial fear in your mind that actually it's going to be a lot of work, when actually it's lots of little steps, not lots of giant leaping steps.
Well put. And I think it's definitely important to mention all the different resources that are out there to help people. I don't think I've necessarily got anything else to massively add though.
I think we'll add a few of those resources to the show notes as well.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole tangent you can end up going down in terms of like, yeah, feeling lonely and being LGBT. But yeah, I think that's almost like a whole podcast in itself, I suppose.
Well, there you go. We've got another cast we can stick in there somewhere and get a few more guests in, can't we?
That's true. And it's almost Pride Month, so it's even.
Oh, it is. We have
Wait, is it-
stuff planned.
Ooh, exciting!
I know.
There better be bunting.
Bunting? No.
Rainbow bunting.
I'll try. I'll see if I can come up with a variant on the logo that's bunting on it for you. How about that? No, actually, in podcast news, one of the things that we want to start doing with this podcast is do a segment which I'm titling some either neurotopical or planes, trains, and autistic mobiles. And the idea is to get
like both those.
I know. The idea is to get people in to talk about their thing, their pleasure, what they research, what they do, why they do it. And I've got a couple of people already lined up for Pride Month who teach queer history. But I want to get people on to talk about their hobby, why they do it, and also why it's a thing which works well with who they are as a person, be that their sexual or gender identity, their neurodivergence, or anything else, and why the two mesh well together. All of these things. And so one of the things we want to do in this podcast is start giving a voice to these people, hear their stories, hear about all the amazing, incredible stuff that they're doing.
Nice, sounds good.
Sounds really good.
Yeah. So one of the people, Sasha, has said he's going to come on and talk about some of his stuff.
I assume Sasha was who you were referring to. I want that blanket. Sorry. The blanket's finally, it's £145.
Oh,
Anyway.
no. There's also a pet jumper, which is like ridiculous.
Back in the room, Sasha would be brilliant. I was going to say, I assumed it was Sasha you were talking about. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, no.
You have to make the blanket as well. You don't just.
What?
You have to make it.
Oh, what? £145 and you have to make it yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, what? Oh, that if you want the small version, it's 140. It's 220 for the large blanket.
Yeah,
which
the
is
19 balls.
Jesus.
Which amuses me that how they decide how large it. How many balls is it? 19.
I want to look like those people in the shot, though. They look happy. I'm like, yes, I want to be happy like them.
And we will be. This is how you combat loneliness with a
Yeah.
Tom Daley blanket.
We better get sponsored by him
Yeah.
now.
No, because Simon's going to cut this out. Simon's like, they've mentioned Tom Daley again. Yeah.
Also, like that shot number 3, which is just like topless, like, person, male presenting person that, like, that's not Tom Daley, is it?
It is. The topless person holding the blanket is Tom Daley. He's very rarely wearing clothes. Part of the reason I follow him on.
Clearly just got out of the pool and was like, you know what, I need to get warm now. Here's this blanket I made earlier. Anyway.
I think we've got sidetracked to the point that we're never going to get back onto loneliness.
This is my job on this podcast. Is basically I'm just here to haul people back on track because we go off down some very, very odd things because we're a pro tangent podcast. It's nice to understand where we go on this. No, but to sum up, first of all, thank you both of you so very much for making this. I know we did it at a bit short notice, and I am incredibly grateful that you're both able to join me to talk about Mental Health Awareness Week and loneliness. So thank you so much for joining me.
You're most welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And like I say, I will post a couple of links to useful resources in the show notes. Next episode will, of course, be our slightly delayed episode on masking. We will probably have the usual crew back. But otherwise, all I can really say is have a lovely Friday and enjoy your weekends. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.